Hi, I'm Sarah Ellenwood. I've been going to Freedom for quite a number of years now, and this is my daughter,
Kaylin.
And we would like to talk to you guys a little bit about our journey through foster care and adoption. So we're just going to kind of start at the beginning of the story and see how it goes. This is not scripted. It's just been laid on my heart to speak to you guys because I know that in the Bible it talks a lot about orphans and taking care of them. And kind of in our modern day America, we don't have orphanages, so we don't really see kind of what other countries probably have to deal with kids whose parents have died of AIDS or something like that. But it's been on my heart to speak to you guys about this, so we're going to just tell a little bit of our story. So, Kaylin, how old are you?
14.
And how many siblings do you have?
About to be 6.
Okay, so there's 6 in your family.
Mm-hmm.
So Dan and I, about 12 years ago, we got married, and we just thought our life was going to be normal, thought we would have our own kids, grow our own family. Adoption had been on my heart a tiny bit, but it had not been on Dan's heart at all, so he kind of ruled that out. And so we just never had any, success with any childbearing techniques, any infertility treatments. And so we talked about the methods to grow our family, and kind of narrowed them down and thought, wow, there's probably a lot of kids in our state, if not in our city, who need families to grow up in and need someone to come home to Christmas to when they're 20. And so we slowly ventured towards there because Dan had this view of who kids were like in foster care and what they were like. And so I just want Kaylin to share a little bit with you about her story from when she was younger and then how she became part of the foster care system, and then we can kind of tell you how we met. So Kaylin, how old were you the first time you lived outside of your home with a different family? Do you remember?
Yeah, 4.
4? Okay.
3 or 4.
3 or 4. And then what was the situation kind of like? Do you know? Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly going there. I remember being there. Yeah.
Okay. So 3 or 4, and then you went back home to live with mom and dad for a little while, and then you went back to live with another family for a little while. Do you remember the first time that you went into Grand Forks Social Services foster care system?
Yeah. 6.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the situation was? Why you left your home and left your mom and dad?
We were living in a like a family home for women, I guess, and children. And so we were there, and I don't really know what happened for sure, but all I remember is we had to go down to like a basement, and then like the ambulance started coming to the house, and then we got into like this car, and then we went to this home or something, and I was very confused, and I was wondering where my mom was and what was happening with her. And then we just got placed in multiple homes, and we're there for like, I would at least say a couple days or maybe a week, and then we go off to a new home, and then we stay there for a bit and then go off to another new home. And I was very glad to have my brother with me because I feel safe around him. So yeah.
Okay. At one point, you were your foster sister was Kelsey Clausen, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's kind of neat. Kelsey's parents did foster care for a little while and had these guys, so it's kind of a cool connection.
Mm-hmm.
So you were in homes for a couple weeks and then sometimes a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, foster homes are not open to kids over the age of 8. And that's just the experience that Kaylin and Keandre have had. So at first it was just 3 siblings, her and Keandre and Kalia.
Mm-hmm.
And Kalia had gotten already placed in a different home since she had been born because she was a baby. But since Kaylin and Keandre were a little older, they kind of bounced from home to home because in an effort to look for a permanent placement for them, they went from temporary placement to temporary placement. And I'm sure you guys have heard a little bit about how that affects kids And so they were placed in a temporary home eventually when Kaylin was in kindergarten, I think.
First grade.
And her name was Margaret, and she was probably by then in her early 70s, late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a wonderful lady. Her and her husband had taken care of over 300 foster kids their whole life. And they were never a permanent placement for anybody. And so they got Kaylin and Keandre over Christmas, and they were told that, or it was just Margaret by that point, she's a widow now, she was told that she would have the kids temporarily, and then they were not able to find a permanent placement for Kaylin and Keandre. And so they just ended up kind of living with Margaret. So what do you think about Margaret? What was your experience? So you were in first grade.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think when you moved in with Margaret? Do you think that was your new home, or did you think you were going to be there for just a little bit, or kind of what are some memories with Margaret?
I thought I was going to be there for a little bit because I was told that I was going to go home like after Christmas or on New Year's. Or go somewhere else. So I guess when I first walked in, it felt very homey. And like it didn't feel like all the other places, because the other places were just like kind of wild, I guess. And so it was very calm in there because she was the only one living there. And so I guess, yeah, she was very nice, and she was very caring. If I needed anything, she would ask me. Or if I wanted food, sometimes she'd be like, okay, you can have something. So it's very like she wanted to like help us and wanted to like,
she wasn't just babysitting you.
Yeah, not babysitting. She actually like was caring for us. Yeah.
So switching back now to where Dan and I were, we had come to an agreement. A lot of the times, I feel like, not always, but a lot of the times the women are very, let's do this, let's help the kids, let's build our family. And the men can typically kind of be more like, oh, I don't know how this is going to work out. I feel really reserved about this. I have a lot of questions. I don't feel comfortable. So we had agreed to take some foster care classes together just to see what it would be like. And that's what the social worker told us to do if we were unsure. And by the way, if you are at that point and looking to maybe just get some information about foster care, I would recommend taking the Pride classes. And the only way that you can do that is you just call social services in your county, and then they will direct you from there. Just tell them you're interested in getting your foster care license or learning more about it. So that's what we did, and we took the classes. And typically in counties, I'm not sure what the situation is right now, but typically there is so much need and not enough families. So families sometimes will have 4 or 6 foster care kids because their house is big enough and they're all what's available. I mean, like I said, we don't have orphanages, and that's for a good reason. And so sometimes the need is quite large and the family support isn't there. So before we even got licensed, before we took our last class even, they had called us and asked us to take a couple little girls. One had just been born, one was 1 year old. And we ended up making the decision to do so. And so we did, and we got our foster care license, and we became new parents to 2 little girls. And at that point, that's all we knew. We were hoping to adopt someday. We were hoping to get an infant, and that all happened. That doesn't always happen that way. But that's what happened in our story. And then we got to meet this wonderful girl and her brother. And so, do you remember what it was like the first time you met us?
Yes.
What?
We went swimming.
We went swimming at the Cannon Inn.
Yes.
Yeah.
All I remember is someone saying that Kylie and Kaylee were there, so I got very excited. And so I guess I was more excited to meet them. But I don't know, it was fun. You guys seem cool, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had heard all about Kaylin and Keandre and how they were the most well-adjusted, most healthy, most level-headed, awesome kids ever, which totally kind of cranked my view of teenagers in foster care, because a lot of times I think that people think that the it's almost like kids are damaged goods when they're in foster care because of how they've grown up. That's not the case. Sometimes kids can have some different issues to deal with, but a lot of times it's the parents that have the hard time and the parents that are quote unquote have the messy life. But as we found out, these kids were awesome, and they, we all have issues to deal with, but it was just part of our family molding together. And so that was the first time we met them. They were super quiet, didn't know really what to say. Kaylin said she was super excited to see her sisters. Kaylin, when you were living with Margaret, did you ever worry about where your siblings were, or where your mom and dad were?
Sometimes if I was wondering a lot, I would, but not really. I guess I would just kind of forget about that. But I always would wonder where they were, and sometimes I'd always call them and ask about Kylie. So
yeah. That was a big part of being in foster care at Margaret's house, is that you were concerned about if your parents were healthy and if your siblings were safe and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think when we got to the point where parental rights were terminated, and we were able then to move forward and think about if we wanted to actually adopt all these children, because in the foster care system, you don't adopt 1 or 2 kids out of a sibling set. You do all or none. So we, just thinking about adopting 4 kids, if we kind of felt way over our heads. Dan and I were in complete disagreement about it. I felt the calling of the Lord very, very clearly and felt very many confirmations through the process. In fact, it was kind of crazy that as we were thinking if we would adopt, we found out that Kaylin's birthday was January 12th, exact same day as my birthday. And we found out Keandre's birthday, our now 19-year-old, is in July, this exact same day as my husband Dan's birthday. And so I just kind of felt like it was more than coincidence. It was a confirmation the whole way. And Dan was totally unsettled about it. So we talked to a lot of people. And in fact, a lot of people were counseling us not to make as big of a step as adopting 4 kids, 2 of them, older than 10. They were saying that we were over our heads, that we were barely parents, and that it probably wouldn't go well, that it would be too big of a problem for us to handle. And so after all our deliberation, we had a lot of support from Dan's family. Everybody got to meet the kids. We went camping together, took you guys on outings. Kaylin slept over at our house a bunch of times. We just fell in love with the kids and thought, yeah, you're right. We can't do this. We're not equipped to do this, but we're jumping in anyways. And I feel like that's kind of been the theme, that we weren't ready in the beginning to have 2 babies in our house, and we were definitely not ready to have 4 kids, especially one was a teenage boy in high school. But we knew it was the right thing to do, and so we just did it, and God totally came through. So I'm going to ask Kaylin, what was it like to move from what had been your home and your grandma and your family to a new family? What was that like for you?
At first, it was very exciting because I wanted to live with my sisters, and I thought it would be cool to have 2 parents and to do all those family stuff that I never really did with Margaret, but we still did with her family. So it was very, very exciting. I was super excited to move in with you guys. And then after a while, it got really hard.
What was hard about it?
It was hard.
Did you have this idea of what a perfect family would be, and we didn't quite live up to that?
Yeah.
Okay. What was different than what you thought?
I guess it was harder to do that. It was harder to feel like we were in a family. And yeah,
it was really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the transition with Keandre and Kaylin moving in with us was very hard, and it was hard for different reasons for all 4 of us. Kaylin, Keandre, Dan, and I. The girls just kind of were like, what's going on? But so it was super hard, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was very, very hard. We were probably stretched to our max. But the cool thing is that it felt so good to be stretched. It felt so good to be out of our comfort zone and doing what we knew God was calling us to do. And I gained strength from that. I pulled strength from knowing we were chasing the purpose God had set in our lives. I felt completely tired at the end of the day, like I had given everything. And I think kind of we all yearn to live a life like that, where we feel like we've given it all at the end of the day and we're chasing a purpose. And so I know Kaylin had a hard time and Keandre had a hard time. And there was, situations we were in the hospital together, and there were situations we were on the phone with the social workers, and there were situations that the social workers and us, we weren't seeing eye to eye on how to handle things in our house. And so there were a lot of hard parts, but I would say about 6 to 8 months, that kind of all transitioned, and things kind of went back to normal as far as life for just a normal family. And since then, so the kids moved in the fall of 2016. We officially adopted in the fall of 2017. And so we've been an official family for 3 years now. And it doesn't always still feel like an official biological family, but we are who God have put us together to be. And one thing I want to say is that getting involved in the foster care system does not mean that you are building your family, that you will be adopting. The point of the foster care system is reunification of the kids and the biological parents. But since that doesn't always work out, the option for adoption does come up sometimes. So if you are interested in just providing foster care for kids, that's awesome. If that is not something for you at all, but you know God has called you to serve the orphans in our community, one cool thing that happened for us is somebody sponsored our family for our first Christmas together. We were so stretched on the new rent for this huge house we were renting. We came from a 2-bedroom apartment. We did not know what we were going to do for Christmas presents. And this awesome family adopted our family for Christmas and just came over with like a truckload of presents. And that's what our kids had that Christmas. And was that pretty cool? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got some cool stuff. They really enjoyed that. So, I mean, that can be something. Pastor Jared has, kind of taken the role of being a part of my son's life, which I think is huge. I think any teenager needs a mentor outside of their parents, but especially someone who maybe isn't going to attach to somebody as a father or mother. To have that extra mentor is huge. So that's another thing you could do. Or if foster care to adoption is something that is exciting for you, feel free to contact me or the pastors and get some more information about how that would work for your family. But we just wanted to tell you a little bit of our story. And is there anything else you want to say? Okay. So I just felt like that was what was on our heart. So thank you for listening.